I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist, and a special welcome today to my awesome guest, Morganne Krauser. Thank you so much for having us. For being here, sorry.
Of course.
And for having us in your living room, I guess, or
Exactly.
office. Yeah. It's so you're coming all the way from the US. It's early morning here in Australia, so my brain's still catching up. But whereabouts are you based?
So I am based in Western Massachusetts, so Boston, and then west a couple hours. So here it is. Just after 3:30 in the afternoon. So we'll match, right? The morning brain and the 3:30 slump brain.
Yeah, that's right. It's and I love that because it's about we're talking about brains. That's what we talk about on this podcast. So it's sometimes we forget that we as adults also have brains that
do what they're gonna do.
Yeah, that's right. The capacity kind of fluctuates as well. We wonder why our kids do that, but we also do it ourselves. So yeah. And you are the parents. You're a parent of a couple of kids, and you are a therapist who works with families, generally who are neurodivergent. So you've got experience of both being a parent and working with families as well. But can you tell us a little bit more about the type of work that you do?
Yeah, so I do a couple of things right now. So I work for an agency where I do in-home therapy. It's a really intensive family therapy intervention where we're out to your house a couple of times a week for a couple hours each time. So we're real up in there. I'm a little bit less involved with the direct clinical practice now. Mostly I supervise the clinicians, but it still means that a lot of my life is taken up by in-home therapy. And then I also do some independent consulting. And so I'll work with families, not as their therapist, so to speak, but sometimes as sort of an add-on to family therapy to get some other ideas, or my kid just got this diagnosis, now what? And sort of doing some of that planning and orienting, and the sky's not falling, I promise. It may feel like it, but from both those angles.
Yeah, excellent. So you've got, and you also help other neuroaffirming therapists as well. So you
So that's one of my favorite parts is I do a lot of consulting and supervision for other neurodivergent therapists. And so, how does that show up in the work? What's that like? What do we need as neurodivergent therapists? How are we better able to support our clients in some ways?
Yeah. So you see things from lots of different angles, which I think is really interesting and going to then be a really great conversation today. I wondered first if you could tell us a little bit about, you've told me a little bit about your work with neurodivergent families. What about your experiences of parenting?
Yeah, so I have done both foster parenting and parenting of children that I am genetically related to. So a little bit of everything over on that side too. But apparently I like to keep life interesting. And so all 3 of the kiddos that are currently in my life are neurodivergent. So we're quite the crowd. I have a 4-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 23-year-old.
Okay, yeah. And so interesting too that you've got that a 23-year-old, so you've seen the full spectrum of childhood as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you think whether it's still going or not at 23,
Oh,
but
it is. Oh, it is.
yeah,
We're still waiting for that prefrontal lobe to really
yeah,
fully develop.
yep, yep. So lots of, oh, excuse my dog, everybody. She's barking at the lights. It's hard to stop light, right? To stop your
It
dog
is.
barking. Because you've had so many different experiences. I'm really interested to hear about what are some of the things that you've. So, first of all, maybe it might be helpful to talk a little bit about family therapy.
Mhm.
And it's because that's something that I recommend for families a lot. And I think when I do, it's when, um, sometimes we can clearly see things that a child needs in terms of maybe skill development or something like that. But sometimes things are more complicated than that. And there are interaction factors that are playing out. And it's things like, for example, the stress of a parent that then is interacting with how well a child manages and that kind of thing. But I have done training in it, but don't do it myself. I'd love to hear how you would explain family therapy to parents.
Yeah. So I think of family therapy as a way to sort of help a family move together, right? So any
Mm-hmm.
one individual in a family may be in individual therapy, right? And so they're working on chugging along towards whatever their goal is, but it can be really hard if not the whole family is moving at the same rate or the same speed. Or the rate and
Right.
speed, rate or direction, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's absolutely important for a kiddo to have individual therapy, and depending on the goals of that therapy, that might be adequate. The same for a parent to have their own individual, but it's often really hard to come home from individual outpatient therapy and integrate those ideas if your family's not along the ride with you. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
so, family therapy really sort of helps us work a little bit of here, a little bit there, right? Like it's sort of when you're trying to zhuzh furniture into the right place, you move it an inch at a time kind of thing. And
Yeah.
we
Yep.
can do that as a family.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I think I like that analogy about getting families all to move together. It makes sense that, yeah, if someone is working on something and taking them in one direction, and my example that comes to mind is like a teenager that's learning or trying to express themselves in a bit of a better way. If it's important then that the parents understand that and accept that and also know why, so that they can respond in a positive way, and it all kind of goes in the right direction.
Right, right. Respond in a positive way, but also respond in a way that's scaled to
Mm.
that teenager's development, right? If
Yes.
a teenager is working on sort of building their independence or something, and then the caregiver is like, "Oh, guess what? I, am never making you dinner again. You're fending for yourself in the kitchen, and also, you need to get yourself to basketball practice in school," right? Like
Yeah.
that might be really like, yes, those are perhaps in the same direction of the youth gaining more independence, but they're at different speeds. And so,
Yes.
doing it together allows us to sort of check in and make sure that we're all sort of not exactly the same speed, right? Because not you it's hurting cats sometimes, family therapy.
Oh, yeah.
but at least we sort of know what's going on, and the family therapist is sort of watching, okay, where everybody is, and is able to sort of adjust the treatment as necessary to, like, okay, we need to catch up over here, and oh, I see you making progress, but we got hold on a second.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, wow. That herding cats analogy, I can really resonate with just being a parent. So I can imagine it, yeah, what it's like in that professional setting as well. And then what do you think it's different for neurodivergent families? What are some of the different, you know, I'm interested to hear because I think all families are different and need different things.
Mhm.
But can you identify things that neurodivergent families need or benefit from that's really different, or is it really just a family by family basis?
I would say it's more of a family by family basis.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, every family comes in with their strengths, right? And so there are some neurodivergent families that I've worked with where the neurodivergence kind of wasn't the presenting problem, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
working on other things. They had the neurotypes sorted out. They were self-accommodating. They were good to go on that um, stage, but in other places needed more support, right? And so
Yeah.
just by virtue of being a neurodivergent family didn't necessarily dictate what they needed from me. Um,
Yeah.
and other families that are ostensibly not neurodivergent, but we're doing a lot of sorting out of different neurotypes and trying to, kind of get everybody to a point where they can recognize that not everybody thinks like you, whether you're neurodivergent or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, okay. I was just curious because I think what I hear from families sometimes is, particularly in terms of managing emotions and that kind of thing, that it can be difficult
Mhm.
to, I mean, yeah, that's an understatement, but also I think everyone finds that at times. But in terms of if a kid's neurodivergent, getting escalated, and a parent's neurodivergent, and also finding it hard to manage the sensory stuff and all
Yeah.
of the feelings. Um, but it's interesting to hear how it's really just about individuals and what they need at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, and mentioning the sensory stuff, one of the fascinating things that I have seen in my work is we're better at talking about sensory stuff for
Mm,
especially neurodivergent kids. Little getting there about neurodivergent families. Adults have sensory needs. What?
yeah.
Um, but humans have sensory needs. And so
Yeah.
it's really, really novel sometimes when I introduce sensory tools or like notice, hey, it looks like maybe, you're feeling like things are a little loud or a little busy or whatever to neurotypical folks, because
Yeah.
it's seen as something that only exists within the neurodivergent realm. And that's just not true.
Mm, yeah.
It
Yeah.
may be different. It may be, more pronounced for
Yeah.
neurodivergent folks, but it's not just us.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. And then what are some of the things that you have learned in your work with families that then you um, prioritize or make conscious effort of doing with your own family?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I will tell you the story of my very first week as a parent. So we
Okay.
started as foster parents
Mm,
before we had kids related to us, and we sort of unexpectedly got a placement of an 8-year-old boy and a 1-year-old girl, and
mhm,
per DCF, the Department of Children and Families, usual, at least in my state, it was a little bit hectic, a little bit unprepared. Um,
mhm,
but so I remember, being, I don't know, 4 or 5 days into this, maybe even not that long. It might have been 2, I don't know. But just feeling like totally overwhelmed and like, I can't do this. How can I not do this? I spend, my entire work life helping families. How can I not parent on my own?
mm,
And one of my coworkers said something. Her daughter was about the same age as our younger foster kiddo, and she said something about nap schedules and routine. And I'm like, wait, routine and ritual, which is a
right.
core element of the attachment, self-regulation, and competency model, which is primarily what I use in my work. And I'm like, I know how to do this, right? But like, I just needed those two parts of my brain to start talking to each other.
Yeah.
um, and so, I rely on ARC a lot. I use it as, my model for how I supervise staff. I use it for how I work with families. And honestly, I use it with my family a lot too, sort of, working on sort of how do we get the base attachment really strong? And then how do we work on attachment or the regulation piece? And then, once
Yeah.
those are, they don't have to be perfect, but once they're relatively in place, we start to, reach for the competency pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
It's so interesting hearing your story, because first of all, I think I can relate to that too, thinking, and so I'm a psychologist, my husband's a pediatrician, and when we had our child, people were like, you guys are going to be so good. And we
It's
thought
fine.
so too. Yeah, we were like, yeah, we will be. And then reality hit, and it was like, your first night home from the hospital, we were like, we don't know what to do with this kid. Um, it's because I think when it's personal, when it's emotional, when you are the one who is tired, it's not as easy. So I think yeah, it's good for all parents to know that, because often they look at us and think, oh, we got it all
No,
sorted.
no, we do not.
No, no.
Mostly I just have a much more active inner critic of doing something with my kiddos, and my therapist self going, you're going to regret that later. You know, you're going to regret that later. And my parents self saying, I do not care. I am doing it right now anyway.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well. But that's interesting, the model that you talk about. It's not one I'm familiar with, but definitely fits how I see working with kids and families. And so you, if we translate it a little bit, you're talking about the attachment first as the
Mhm.
base, so that kids have that good relationship with us as parents and feel really safe and secure in their environment as well. So
They
think
know what
things
to
like that
expect from
then.
their caregivers. They know what to expect from their world.
That's right, and their needs are, for the most part, met,
Mhm.
um, in terms of things like, yeah, you know, knowing that we will respond to them, and that
Mhm.
kind of trust in us. And then you then talked about the regulation, which
Mhm.
is, you know, emotional, is the first one that comes to mind, but being able to manage things like emotions and that kind of thing.
And identify them, right? Like, I think
Yes.
sometimes we jump to the manage when that kiddo or individual, let's be real, it doesn't necessarily have to be a kid, doesn't understand what's going on inside of them. And so how can you be
Yes.
asked to regulate something when you're like, I don't know what this feeling is. Am I
Yeah,
hungry?
that's
Am
right.
I angry? Do I need to
Yep.
pee? I don't know. It's really unclear.
Yes. That's so true. And because I explain it to kids often, that it's like when the emotion or feeling's really big, you can help yourself make it a bit smaller.
Mhm.
But if you don't recognize the need to do that, you're not going to start the process too. So
Mhm.
it's understanding and recognizing that you're having the emotion, and actually maybe I need to do something about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the knowing what it is helps us to pair more effective do somethings, right? Like,
Yes.
I think one of the things that I do often talk about with families is, the physiological needs and the emotional needs, they sometimes get really messy. So
Mm,
I don't know if y'all use the term hangry, right? The intersection
yeah.
of hungry
Yes.
and angry, right? Like,
Yep.
is that a feeling? Is it a physiological need? I don't know. It's a little
Mm,
unclear. And so, kind of trying to pay attention to those things. And so the presentation of hangry, so to speak, may look really angry, and sure, the anger coping skills may help, but realistically that feeling's not going away until we deal with the blood sugar. um,
yes.
and so, the more accurately we can identify the feeling, or that caregivers can reflect a feeling back to a kiddo so that they kind of start to learn a model of what's going on, the more effectively we can choose something to respond.
Yeah.
And certainly, the earlier we notice it, the easier it is to sort of tweak it a little
Yeah.
bit here, a little bit there. But yeah.
Yeah. That's right. And then you talked about the C for competency. So that's
Mhm.
kind of skill building and that kind of thing. Is that
Yeah,
how
yeah.
you'd
Like,
put it?
who am I in the world? Who do I want to
Mm-hmm.
be in the world? Um, Sort of where do I want to go? What's my future? Executive functioning really sort of fits in there, right? Like, what are my future plans? How am I going to get there?
Mm,
Does studying for this math test really have long-term consequences or not, right? And can I assess that? Can I make those choices? um,
yeah. And I agree with you so much that those are that's often our goal as a parent, are those things. But we need those other two layers
Right.
first. Do you what tends to happen in your experience if kids don't have the first two and we're trying to work on competencies?
Yeah, it doesn't work is the short answer,
Okay.
right? So like if a kiddo can't regulate, how can we expect them to plan for the future? Right? If a kiddo
Yeah,
is super dysregulated, how can we expect them to remember that their chore is to take out the trash? Right? How can we
yeah,
expect them to remember that, like, if you don't start working on this paper this week, next week you're going to be cramming it in and there's not going to be enough time, right? That higher level executive functioning planning requires an amount of like kind of quiet, for a lack of a better word,
yeah,
internally.
yep,
And if you're dysregulated, that quiet's not there, right?
yeah,
And similarly, like, how can we expect a kiddo to get to the point where they can regulate and quiet themselves when their world is really noisy, or like metaphorically noisy, or inconsistent, or otherwise unexpected, right? Because they're going
mm-hmm.
to be spending so much time trying to figure out, like, what is going on in my world. There's nothing left over to figure out what's going on inside of me, right? Because
Yeah,
if it might be a tiger, I mean, it's probably not a tiger in most families, but there's something scary out here. I don't have time to figure out what my emotion is, right? The tiger is a much more uh
yeah,
pressing issue, right? And so
yeah,
that's why they sort of build on each other, right? We don't need the attachment to be perfect before we start working on the regulation, but we need it to be there. The ARC model is often depicted in a house, and I think that that's a really
mm,
great understanding, right? We don't need to get it to the point where the first floor is fully furnished and we've got the wallpaper and the furniture and whatnot
yeah, okay,
before we start building the second story.
yeah,
But we need some solid walls, right? We need those load bearing walls in place before we can start building the second story. And the same when we go from regulation to competency. It doesn't have to be
yeah,
perfect. It doesn't, like, it is the ARC model is not a linear model. It's not, okay, we do this, we're done. Now we go here.
mm-hmm.
There is back and forth. And it's,
Yeah,
okay, we're hanging out in the regulation. Ooh, there's a place that the attachment is maybe not as firmed up as we want to be. All right, we're going to hop down there and work on firming that back up. And then we're going to hop up here. And we have a little
yeah,
extra capacity. So let's dip our toes into competency. We're not necessarily moving all the way upstairs, but we're going to dabble a little bit.
yep. I like that analogy a lot, and I think because also, yeah, it's I in my brain I got this visual then of like building a house. We
Mhm.
got to have the foundation, and then we start with you know, putting it all together. It doesn't have to be, yeah, you don't do it level by level, but there's certain things that need to be there before you can
Right.
go to the next level. Yeah. Um, but also I think that we come back to things as kids develop too. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned getting on in your first week of parenting, you had a 1-year-old and an 8-year-old. Very different,
Very different.
very different. Yeah. And so you may, yeah, I mean, that thought's not related to this thought, but they're very different. But also, then with an 8-year-old, things can be going okay, and then they go to the next age or stage, and then you've got to reassess that attachment
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, because they reach those tween or teenage years, and they need to be a bit more independent. So it's not something that's like done. It's
Right.
about
Right.
consciously thinking about, yeah, do we need to? How do we strengthen these parts? And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well, one of the we call them blocks in the attachment uh, level of ARC is effective response, right? And
hmm,
so it used to be consistent response, and then as a field we sort of figured out, well, people can consistently do it poorly, and that's not what
right.
we're aiming for.
Yeah.
So it got rebranded as effective response, right? And absolutely, the way you effectively respond to a toddler is different than the way you effectively respond to an elementary schooler, is different than how you effectively respond to a teen, right? And so we have to keep coming back and sort of, tweaking those a little bit. Another one of the blocks in the attachment, I'm totally forgetting the word that goes there, but the attachment level is caregiver affect management, which is a caregiver's ability to kind of deal with ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
How do we kind of handle our own emotions, our own responses, right? And say a caregiver, changes jobs, or, that caregiver's parent passes, or, big things happen in the caregiver's life. Suddenly we're hopping back down here into the caregiver affect management, because they're having to learn how to manage themselves differently.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of like, all right, well, we're dabbling here, dabbling there, back and forth. And it's part of one of the things that I really love about that model is I truly believe it is applicable across the board, right? Like there is the, very top attic of the ARC model that's trauma integration. And that's maybe not necessarily relevant to everybody, but the first 3 levels absolutely are.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's, it's really interesting. And I think, really fits with, I think, what I hope all parents can get to a place of seeing as well, that without that kind of strong sense of security and safety, then, that's really the basis of being able to then do all the other things. So, getting that sorted as a parent is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear whether, you talked a little bit about just then the self-regulation, or like managing feelings as a parent and adult. What are some ways that you think parents can do that? Or is it again a matter of everybody is different?
So I think it's everybody's different, but the sort of overarching thing that I would offer is, all those things that you're telling your kid to do, they're probably a good idea for you too.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
if we think about sensory interventions as an example, right? You may have your kiddo in occupational therapy or all sorts of services. And so they're using body socks and weighted blankets and this, that, and the other thing. And great, they're awesome for your kid. They're also really useful for you. Right. And what I love about that is it serves 2 purposes, right? On one hand, it serves the purpose of regulating you as the caregiver, because that is really and truly mission critical. So it regulates you as the caregiver, but it also provides a model for your kiddo, right?
Yeah.
That they can see you using tools, using skills to help regulate yourself. And so it makes them feel a little bit less like an alien when they're being told to take deep breaths and count to 10. And they're like, who else is taking deep breaths and count to 10? Right? As opposed to, I have had, movie nights with my kids where we're all in our body socks on the couch, right? We're all sort of working on that regulation. And, it may not have exactly the same effect for all of us, but it's a way to sort of we're using this tool, we're valuing sensory comfort, right? And even if we're not all the way to comfort, at least sensory containment, maybe. As an alternative.
Yep. Yeah, that's surprising to me that I haven't thought of it that simply, as to whatever you're trying to get your kid to do, you do it too. And obviously I know that, but it's stuttering, a much simpler way to think about it, rather than think, okay, so my kid's got all their needs met. Now what am I going to do for me? And adding, just double it, just also copy what they do. Deep, if you're teaching them deep breaths or slow breathing, you do it too. If you're trying to teach them to walk away when they're annoyed, you walk away, take a minute. If you need, also just do something fun so that you feel better. That's good for parents as well.
I've had my 4-year-old say, Mama, do you need to take some deep breaths?
Is it the most frustrating thing sometimes, but also the cutest thing?
Yeah.
Um, and I always say to parents too, I think sometimes kids are good at picking it out in other people before they can apply it to themselves sometimes. So,
I think that's true
um,
with people, right?
well,
Like
yeah,
how many adults are
oh,
sitting there
true.
noticing something about their kid,
Yes,
but not noticing it in themselves?
yes, yep,
It's easier to see it on the outside, right? Like that's part of why a therapist is useful, is because we are that
yeah,
outside observer coming in that might be able to
yep,
pick up on things that you can't see when you're in it, right? And so it
yes,
absolutely is easier to figure out who that, what that person over there needs, is feeling, the natural consequences of their behavior, right? Like than
yes,
it is to notice in ourselves.
yep. Yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like I'm having lots of "ah" moments as we talk here, which is great. Um, but yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is too that we can frame it as a way of thinking, "Oh, that's great. They've got that at the beginnings of that skill." It's not just them being, I don't know, whatever
Yeah, well,
negative
I
connotation we
I
would
loved it
normally give it.
because it indicated to me that she has integrated that as a reasonable skill to use in moments of stress,
Yeah,
strain, or annoyance. That
yeah, that's
that's what
right.
she offered, right? Like that she was able to say, like, hey, this thing helps me, because she's also she would like to notify all of the world when she's using her regulatory skills, which again I think is fantastic.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
but like that it showed that there was that connection.
yeah, exactly. Uh, so I wanted to ask as well. And so then I wondered, there's two things to ask left, and one of them was about being neurodivergent as a parent. And then the last one was just to see if there are any particular things that you would, or that you say a lot to parents that you think might be good general advice. But I'm wonder about being neurodivergent and a parent. Do you think it makes it, are there things that predictably make it harder to be a parent if a person's neurodivergent?
Yes, and right, like I,
Mm,
I do I do think that neurodivergence may predispose us to certain sensitivities, right? Like we may have higher or lower sensory needs than other parents. um, and especially when you're raising neurodivergent kids, I think it can be a real asset, right? Like
mm,
my husband is ostensibly neurotypical, and and he's often like, I don't understand how we got there, right? And I can see
mhm.
how we got there, right? I might be just as
Yeah,
dysregulated and joining in the chaos, but I can at least see how we got there.
yeah, yep,
um, and I think too, like that my older daughter seems to get a lot of comfort in our sameness in that way.
yeah,
And so, again, going back to that modeling, right? Like I'm not just modeling using a coping skill. I'm modeling how I, as a neurodivergent individual, am moving through the world and taking care of my needs, right? And
mhm,
like, at the end of the school year last year, she was feeling a little shy about using her headphones at some point, and I realized I never use mine. Right. I
right,
absolutely should, but I never use mine. And so I stuck them in my purse so that I can have them. And so now when we go to the movie theater, I got, my kids' headphones hanging off the side of my purse, mine inside, and we all pop them in. Right. And I can model that you don't have to be miserable, right? Like just because
yes,
the coping skills or sensory tools or whatever that we use may be sort of unexpected in a world that privileges neurotypicality,
mm,
we can choose to opt out of that, right? We can
yeah,
choose to self accommodate, and that is something that I can model for my kids in a way that my neurotypical husband can't, in the same way, right? Like you
mm,
can certainly model all
mm,
sorts of regulation skills, but it sits different, if that makes sense.
yes. Yeah, yeah, I like that idea. I think I say to parents a lot too that that empathy is a lot greater or easier to come by when you are more similar. Yeah. But also then the opportunity to model, I think, and be a real role model, which are both the same words. So yeah. It's I think anything that we feels harder as a parent is also usually an opportunity as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah. I
double
mean,
edged. Yeah.
I think it's exactly that, right? Like, is it harder to parent as a neurotypical or as a neurodivergent person? Absolutely, especially if you're not willing to acknowledge or accommodate your own neurodivergence, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to parent like a neurotypical person as a neurodivergent person, yeah, it is going to be harder, right? Because
Yeah.
parenting is
Okay.
hard to begin with, but certainly
Yes.
parenting trying to be something different than you are
Yes.
is going to be
Yeah.
wildly hard, right? And I
Yep.
and I think that's where sometimes the internalized ableism comes in, because
Yeah.
we have decided culturally that like the neurotypical parent is better, and
Mm-hmm.
so those of us who are neurodivergent in parenting should like aspire to look like the neurotypical
Yeah.
parent.
Yep.
Why? Right? Like
Yeah.
that. Why? why
Yeah. Because it's
why is
not,
it
you're
not
not
better to do
better.
it this way, right? But like, but that ableism is so strong, right? We teach our
Yes.
kids coping skills often so that they look more neurotypical, not so that they're more comfortable in their own skin.
Yeah. Yeah. And much like they might be experiencing this disconnect and then masking their
Yeah.
neurodivergence at school and that kind of thing, well, parents can end up masking as adults and trying to
Right.
mimic the
And then
typical, but
that's
it's
what we're
just really
modeling.
more common. Yeah. Yes. Oh, that's another one of those aha moments I've had. Yeah, so really about being authentically who you are and doing what you need for you, um, models that for your kids. Chances are too that it's also going to be providing what they need.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if we finish then on like are there two or three things that you would love parents to know that you find yourself saying a lot to families?
So it's super cliche, and I am confident that all of your listeners have heard it before. And the bit that I'm adding is like, yeah, but no, really, we need to pay attention to it. Is
Okay.
the like put your own oxygen mask on first, right?
Right.
That like
Yeah.
you can't pour from an empty cup. I can keep coming up with like cliche after cliche after cliche that communicates the same thing, right?
Yep.
We can't, right? Caregiver affect management, being in that attachment section,
Mhm.
right? Like domain, that's the word I've been looking for the whole time we've been talking, in the attachment domain. Um, that that we have to take care of ourselves, right? And again, sort of going back to what we were talking about, ARC, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to be 110% regulated all of the time. But if you find yourself like, I'll deal with my need later, I'll deal with my need later, I'll deal with my need later,
Mm,
there's a point at which you're also not able to deal with your kids' needs. And that,
mm.
I mean, I think that is often especially salient for moms, right? We talked a little bit about ableism. We'll bring in the system of oppression known as sexism, right? That like moms are expected to hold it together all of the time. We're
Yes.
expected to
Yep.
do everything, be everything, not have any
And
sort
be
of
nice and
boundaries or
calm.
self,
Yeah.
or right, like.
Yeah.
And so like we're taught that like to be a quote unquote good mom, like we have to just have this like eternal spring of energy
Yeah.
for other people. And no, we don't. We don't. And
Yeah.
anybody that's saying they do is full of baloney. Either that, or I would really like to know like whatever supplement or thing that they're taking, because I want to join the club.
Yep.
That like we have to take time for ourselves. And so,
Yes.
I remember in the early days of my parenting, sitting with like knowing that I'm burning out. We're burning this candle from both ends. I am running out of resources and feeling wildly guilty doing
Yeah.
anything about it. Right.
Yeah.
And so eventually just having to make my peace with like, yeah, sometimes the kids need to stay at daycare longer because I need
Yeah.
a moment. Right.
Yes.
And I can look at that from the like, oh, you're outsourcing more of the raising of your children than is specifically or, strictly necessary. Or I can look at that and say like, okay, them spending a little bit longer at daycare means that when I pick them up, I'm more ready to be present. I'm more able to engage in them in a meaningful quality way rather than a like, all I've got is to keep you alive. That's all I can do.
Absolutely. I think two, like, two things. One is that, you know, sometimes when we're asked these questions, I don't know if you thought that as well, you kind of think you have to come up with something different. But the reality is, and you were saying, like, parents have heard this before, but sometimes as parents, we're looking for that magical other thing we didn't know. And I don't think it's out there. Um, I think, well, yeah, I think there are only a few set kind of things that really are going to help. And sometimes it's good for a listener to think, oh, yeah, okay, so the big piece that's been missing is that thing I know, but I don't actually do. Um, and the chances of us finding that person who has the answer, like you mentioned, who, is pretty slim.
I joke that they were out of magic wands at my graduation. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I know. It would be a different place if we all got issued one, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that
Um,
you bring up a good point with the like, always hoping that this person, this next person has like the key or whatnot. That like, I think the other big thing that I would offer is good enough is okay. Right.
yeah,
Because I think
yes.
often the reason that we're searching for that magic cure, that, whatever, is because those things that we do already know aren't all the way fixing it.
Mm,
Right.
mhm.
And what is it? Matter is neither created nor destroyed or whatnot, right? Like
Right.
same is true of time and all of these other things. And like the truth is we're working with a finite set of resources, right?
Yeah,
We're
that's
not
right.
super people. And
Yep.
we have to decide, each of us for ourselves, right? Because everybody parents differently, every family culture is different. Where are the places that are good enough? Right.
Mm, mhm.
I could spin this camera and you could see my living room, and I'll just I'll spare you the visual, but tell you there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 piles, baskets of laundry. They're all clean, right? Like my children have clean clothes to wear, but good enough is they made it out of the dryer. They made it out of the
Yeah,
dryer and
that's right.
upstairs.
They're no longer wet at the bottom of the basket.
Right. And so, that's one of the places where I'm like, you know what? That's got to be good enough, because it's going to
Yeah,
free up capacity for me to spend on other things that do feel more important. And
yeah,
there may be families that are like, oh, 6 baskets of laundry, my goodness. And, and maybe there are other, family cultures where like, that's not good enough for them.
yeah,
And that's okay too. But we all have to find for ourselves, like, there's not the magic cure. There's not infinite time, space, energy, what have you. And so what are we going to give a little on so that we have more capacity for the things we do care about, for the things that are
yeah.
important to us, important to our kids, important to how we engage with the larger world.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And I had parents say before, when I do some um, Zoom sessions, your house is so neat and clean. I'm like, yeah, behind my screen.
There's a
I
reason they
bet,
were aimed at the couch. You can't
yeah.
clutter. This
I'm
is
like,
wall.
yeah, you probably have 3 meters squared, or it's not even that, like a meter and a half squared in your house that's clean if you need a Zoom background. Um, and this week, my husband was away, have a few extra meetings and stuff on, so I haven't cleaned the kitchen the whole last 3 days. Uh, and so that I will do at the end. But same thing, it's like, okay, I can spend time and capacity on that, or I can spend it on the things I need to be calm to take
Right,
all the people where they need to go and do what they need
right,
to do. So
right. I mean,
Yeah.
in my family, we very recently, had some rearranging so that I'm single parenting 5.5 days a week, right?
Mm.
The way I mom had to change.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
a very different ball game to go from a 2-parent household to like, all right, it's just me most of the time. Here we go.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So it's yeah, I think I love where we kind of come back to maybe the beginning part of that attachment bit down the bottom is that we're all human and it's not going to go perfectly. Good enough is enough in terms of you know all of the aspects of parenting. Um, and then thinking that we talk about how the relationship at the bottom, that secure attachment for our kids, is the basis, but we are part of that. We're one of the people in those relationships, so it's really important that we ourselves do what we need to do for us, that we have the right support, that we take breaks, we manage our energy, and yeah, because
And we're
without us
modeling
being
it.
us, yeah, and modeling that as well.
But
Yeah,
by doing it
without,
for ourselves, we are inherently modeling it, right? Like we are setting our kids up to be happier, healthier, better adjusted neurodivergent adults because they get to see an adult doing those things. Right. I think
yeah,
that's the piece we often undersell is like, oh, well, I don't matter. Right. The like, I'm supposed to be there for my kids. Yeah. And being there for you is part of being there for your kids. Right. Not only
yes,
because it gives you the
exactly.
capacity to do it now, but it also shows your kids that's part of being human. We got to meet. We
Yes,
got to deal with them.
yeah, that's right. Nothing good comes from just pushing them down or pretending they're not
Nope.
there. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a really great conversation, and I think, yeah, I mean, you're saying things like that. You think that maybe the advice has all been heard before, but even me for today in our conversation, I had these little moments of, oh yeah, oh yeah. So I'm sure that there are parents who have had some of those same thoughts. So really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation and spread the little bits
Oh,
of
of course.
magic through the aha moments. And
We just got to
yeah,
repackage it until it clicks. Right.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining me today. And
Of course.
yeah, I'll call you if I need help with a 23-year-old someday.
Well, I don't promise to have any answers, but I'll give it a shot.
You will by then. You
I
will
will.
by
I will.
then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.